help me welcome onto the stage Indah Rufiati from Indonesia. Hi Indah, apa kabar?
Hai, kabar baik. I'm good. How
Sehat
are you?
semua? Good,
Sehat
good, good.
semua.
Sehat.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to join this festival.
Great. The floor is all yours. Take it away.
Okay, I will share my presentation. Can you see my presentation now?
Perfect.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Indah Rufiati. I'm Fisheries Lead in Blue Ventures. It's an amazing opportunity to be with you today. I'm talking to you from my home island of Bali in Indonesia. Indonesia is the country of superlatives, the largest archipelagic country in the world with 17,491 islands, one of the world's richest nations in terms of its biodiversity, one of the biggest global seafood producers, but also one of the places facing the most severe consequences from climate breakdown and where marine life is facing some of the most severe threats on the planet. Growing up in a country with thousands of islands and one of the longest coastlines in the world, I have always obsessed with the sea. I'm also an artist and the sea inspires my paintings. I paint fishers' life and fish species, focusing on understanding more about our relationship with the sea through art. For the last 8 years, I've dedicated my work and energies to trying to finding new ways to help marine conservation make sense to some of my country's most vulnerable communities. But for the story I want to share with you today, I must take you on a journey to another part of my country. I want you to meet Ibu Wadimba. She's a fisherwoman who has lived her whole life here in Dara village. It's a tiny village in a tiny island in the archipelago of Sulawesi, where Ibu Wadimba provides for her family by catching octopus on the reef flat. She catches octopus using a traditional and low-impact fishing gear when the tide is low and the reef becomes exposed to the air. Her fishing method is different from fishermen who use small boats to go fishing further out, then swim around the reef to spare the octopus. But her work is just as important. She learned this technique from her mother. Her whole life, she's seen her catches decline. For a long time, her community has known that the coral reefs on which their fishing economy depends needs to be protected if their fishery is to survive. But existing models for marine conservation have not helped the ocean-dependent people of Dara village. Problems have grown over the years. Destructive fishing, illegal sand mining, and the lack of monitoring and surveillance of their fishery. 4 years ago, Ibu Wadimba tried a new approach. She and the community started regular monitoring to understand the state of their fisheries and used the data to guide conversations with her community about what could be done to turn the tide. Through this process, the community revitalized its traditional marine management practices that had been inactive for years. By combining traditional knowledge and the data that Ibu Wadimba and her friends collected, the community decided to close some parts of its fishing grounds temporarily to give time and space for the octopus to grow and reproduce. The village implemented the first temporary closure for this valuable octopus catch that the country had ever seen. When the closure reopened, their catches went up. Women and men were catching larger, more profitable catch that fetched a higher price at market. This approach inspired other communities in other provinces to replicate the idea, and Dara village continued to manage its fisheries using this approach, now in its third year of closures, with ambitions rising every year. Through their increased participation in fisheries and their management, Ibu Wadimba and her community have become influential and respected champions of locally led conservation, leading the way in managing a vital resource their communities relies on, and demonstrating that conservation can work for their community. As Ibu Wadimba's idea has grown, being taken up by communities across Indonesia, I'm privileged to support a vibrant network of communities and local organizations who are learning from one another and sharing through community exchange. Since the pandemic hit, we've managed to transition a lot of this work online, providing a support system to dozens of communities across the archipelago during these difficult times. We've got a long way to go. Climate change is not a threat for my country. It is a daily reality that we face, getting worse every year. But I'm convinced that this approach of empowering coastal communities to lead marine conservation efforts is the only way we will be able to rebuild our fisheries at scale. And scale matters here in Indonesia because many tens of millions of people depend on us reversing the decline in fisheries that Ibu Wadimba has lived through. To secure what Ibu Wadimba has been doing in fisheries management, we have an important task to connect her effort with the government fisheries management plan so the effort can be adapted by the authority. Blue Ventures believes that natural resource management is most effective when the people who are affected by the rules can define and modify them. We believe that those closest to problems such as overfishing are also closest to finding solutions. Thank you so much for your time. That's the presentation from me.
Terima kasih, Indah. All right. Thank you so much again, Indah, for sharing your experience and also the experience of Ibu Adimba di Sulawesi.
Yes.
So I have a couple of questions for you, actually. So how have the fishing communities actually adopted Ibu Adimba's example? Have they been receptive to adopting this method of closing down their fisheries for a while, or was there some resistance? And if there was resistance, how did you overcome it?
Okay, thank you, Peter. That's a great question. So our approach in fisheries management, it is always a participatory approach. So we always involve the community from the beginning of the process. So the process will start with fisheries profiling, where we capture the state of the fisheries in the village. And then from fisheries profiling, we will monitor fisheries monitoring method with the communities. So we will find the variable like total catch, and then biology of octopus. And then we train the community to measure the octopus, to collect the data. So it is participatory fisheries monitoring. So the communities who are the ones, the main actors who collect the data, and then we have to analyze the data, and we feed the data back to the communities. That data feedback session is good for the community to start the conversation about the state of their fisheries. They start to understand the trend of the fisheries in their area, like if the catches getting increasing or the size is smaller. So the community start that conversation, and from the conversation, after several discussion, like for 1 year, they usually will start deciding what fisheries management we can do. So they start thinking about fisheries temporary closure, where the communities close only some parts of fishing ground. So it's not the whole fishing ground. They still can fish in other fishing grounds. So there are some parts that being closed for 3 months to give time for octopus to grow and to reproduce. After 3 months, they will reopen the fishing ground and they can fish again. And they will do the evaluation. And then after they evaluate the result, they will decide what is next. So the ambition is getting even more ambitious after each closure. So at the moment, for example, we already conducted 11 temporary closures across Indonesia. And one of the communities in Sulawesi, they want to do it every 3 months. So it's not only once a year or twice a year, but every 3 months they will close some part of their fishing grounds for fisheries management. So I think always involve the community from the beginning. We listen to them, and then we assist them. We help them in understanding their fisheries. I think that's always good to that's the approach.
Thank you so much. Okay, I have a question here from Danush Gopal. How are the communities affected by industrialized fishing ships? And how is the Indonesian government tackling this issue of industrialized fishing ships?
Blue Ventures, we work with small-scale fishing communities. So for the industrialized fishing in our country, I think it's not something that I have the authority to answer that question. But in our work with small-scale fishing communities, we also involve private sectors and government, so that the amazing efforts that the community do in the village level, in the field level, is also recognized by broader stakeholders like provincial government and also national government, so that they can get the acknowledgement for their community-based fisheries management. And with private sector and government, we also want to improve like value chain, for example, because I think at the moment we cannot work alone. We must involve other stakeholders like academia, university, government, and also private sectors to work together towards the sustainability of small-scale fishing in Indonesia.
Thank you. We have another question in our chat group for you. How does the community assert its customary management over the fisheries resource? So are their rights, their customary rights, are they supported by the government? And how can they exclude outsiders from this fishing resource?
So that's an interesting question. So during the closures, for example, so if one village do the closure, they will have a poster and also a formal letter from the head of village informing other villages that fish in the same area. So they want to inform to other communities that, hey, we are doing octopus temporary closure in this fishing ground. Please respect this decision. So we also ask you not to fish in this fishing site that is being closed. That's one of the effort about the raising awareness and informing to other communities. And for the customary right in Indonesia, we also support the revitalization of customary right fisheries management in Eastern Indonesia, because the practice actually, some of the practice is not active anymore. So we try to reactivate, revitalize the fisheries management practices. And we also have a close coordination with government, from the district government, also regency government and provincial government, to make sure that it is accommodated in the legal framework. So yes, it is supported by the government as well.
Yes, I think it would be very important for, especially in a big place like Indonesia, to get the government on board. Has it been easy for you to get government support, especially with regards to them supporting these local small fishery communities?
Yeah, Peter, there is a good lesson learned that we learned during our process. So, for example, in an island of Nusa Laut in Maluku, we work with district government. So in the beginning, by involving district government, even like the one who signed the invitation letters, it's not us, it's the government. So it makes the sense of belonging to the program is higher. And actually that approach is very effective. Now we got support not only from the district government, but also from each head of customary village. They also support the programs, and they now more active, and they even want to support the program not only by their resource and energy, but because in Indonesia each village has funding from the government. they're also willing to allocate some of the village funding for conservation efforts in Nusa Laut Island Maluku. So I think involving government from the even village level and district level is important, because collaboration is always better than when we work alone.
Yes, fantastic. One last question from me. So you mentioned that Ibu Adimba is in Sulawesi, and it's been very successful for her. How have the other fishing communities on the other islands been receptive to this closures? I mean, have you spoken with fishing communities, the Papua, or in Sumatra or in Java or the other islands? How have those communities received this effort?
So after the closures in Sulawesi is conducted and other communities hear about these stories, we also did community exchange. So from communities in other provinces go to Sulawesi, and they learn about octopus fisheries closures, and it inspired them to do the same. So at the moment, some fishers, some communities in other provinces outside of Sulawesi, for example, in Sumatra, in Maluku, in Eastern Nusa Tenggara, they also want to do the same. And at the moment, they're already in discussion stage and already decided when will be the closure and where the closure is. So yeah, I think in terms of the reception, it is good. And I think once the communities knows that there is a simple approach that they can understand, I think the community is always willing to learn, because at the end of the day, it is to safeguard the natural resources where their livelihood relies on. So I think we always think that sharing from each other, from one communities to another communities, is good to spread the news about conservation, because actually this octopus temporary closure is just a catalyst, only the entering stage towards more ambitious fisheries management and conservation. So from octopus, from closure, we want to build long-term fisheries management in broader area, not only in village level, but also, for example, in island level or in regional level. That's why we use this simple approach, so that the community can learn and then they want to do more.
Oh, fantastic. That's really a wonderful work that you're doing, Indah, and I wish you all the best. Fisheries management is such an important aspect of biodiversity conservation, especially for us over here in Southeast Asia. So, harap Indah sehat semua, and harap berjumpa lagi.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Stay safe.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.